Well, all right. So this is an important webinar because the master plan itself is one of the most important documents for Wayne Township. Certainly going to let Chris Koch get into it in more detail, but a master plan, and I'll read this to you, significantly impacts a community's future by providing a long-term vision for development and growth, guiding land use, infrastructure, and resource allocation. It acts as a roadmap, ensuring that development aligns with community goals and values, promoting sustainability and enhancing the overall quality of life. Currently, we're working on, or the township is using a master plan that's over 30 years old. So it's been quite some time since we've had an updated and new one. And it is a very important document. And we've got a very important man with us here, Chris Koch, who's going to get into this with us. Chris is the township planner for Wayne, serving as the head of the planning department for Wayne Township and has been there since 2018. He's a great dude, very smart, very professional, knows his stuff well. And the first question I'm going to ask for you, and I'm sorry, before I ask this question of you, Chris, I do want to just let everybody know that what we're doing here is not a political event. This is an informational event. So we're certainly not going to be taking any questions that has anything to do with politics or why things or whatever. This is just about information, learning the importance of the master plan and what it can do. So, Chris, you with me?
Absolutely here. Thank you, Ferris.
You got it. So
Uh,
my one question for you is, what kind of feedback are you looking for from Wayne businesses to help you with the formation of this master plan?
so I'll get into that in a little bit, but basically, the master plan looks at the long-term development of the town, what's going to happen over the next 10 or 20 years. And this is a chance for the business community and just for residents of Wayne in general to have some input and, try to direct it in a way that better suits their needs. So obviously there's zoning issues that, get some businesses caught up in terms of bureaucratic process. If there are those things that you've noticed with how the town is being managed in terms of land use, this is a good chance to get that input to hopefully, streamline some things in the future. I do appreciate that we're trying to keep this non-political. I try to be as non-political as possible. I don't think there's anything more political than the long-term development of land and the way it impacts everyone throughout the township. So it's almost impossible to avoid. I'm going to get into my PowerPoint and we'll get rolling. I'll have a couple of areas for questions as we go through. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ferris. Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Chamber, for having me here. Let's see. I'm sharing my screen. Am I able? There we go. So I'm going to cover a variety of items. Got to do an introduction. It's not a presentation if there's no introduction. I'm going to talk about government and land development. What is the master plan? Wayne's current master plan. What we're doing with the new master plan. Going to get a little bit into affordable housing update and then talk about what is going to be the Wayne downtown. So just a couple of questions, things to think about as we're going through the presentation. Are there times where uses permitted by the land development ordinance are too strict, where, maybe you had someone who wanted to come in with a new and interesting use, but wasn't able to because zoning did not permit it? Are there intersections that make it dangerous or difficult to access your property? Do your suppliers have a hard time getting to your property? Are there issues where truck circulation isn't working? Are there constraints on utilities, whether it's water, sewer, or even communications utilities that prevents your business from growing? These are some questions that, hopefully we can address as part of the master plan. And what can the chamber do? The chamber could formally provide comments and recommendations on behalf of the business community in general. But for individual business owners and residents, you can send us letters or emails. Emails are probably more preferred, or attend our meetings. We're trying to get as many people to our public engagement meetings as possible. And businesses, this is a request from me to you. If you can post flyers of our master plan events or share social media, things that get the word out, that get more people to our meetings, that would be very helpful, because the more people we hear from, the better the plan is going to be. So just a little bit of contact information. If you want to find more information on the master plan, you can go to waynetownship.com/masterplan. You can contact me at kokc@waynetownship.com. And we have an email for the master plan itself, masterplan@waynetownship.com. And then we are going to have a couple of events. We're going to be tabling at Wayne Day, September 28th. And we are going to have our second round of public meetings this December. So a little bit about the planning department. The planning department is really your first stop for permits related to use or development of land. If you're coming in as a new tenant to an existing site, you're likely to have to get a zoning permit. And the zoning permit is a chance for us to verify that you're in a district that permits the sort of business you want to do, and you have enough parking and you meet other requirements. For larger changes to the site, if you're changing parking, if you are building a new building or doing an addition, you'll probably need a site plan approval. That puts you before the planning board. It's a longer, a little more challenging process. So the zoning permit, you might be in and out of the department in maybe 10 days. Site plan, subdivision, easy application. You're through the department in maybe 6 months. Larger applications like we have with GAF, they applied in 2022 and just got started building this year. So depending on the size of the application, that can be a pretty lengthy process. If you come in and you need a variance, let's say you have a new restaurant opening up and you require 50 parking spaces under our ordinance, but you only have 40, you'd have to go for a variance. It's a similar process to the site plan and subdivision approval. That's sort of how the business community relates to the planning department on a day-to-day basis. But we also do long-range planning, such as with our master plan and affordable housing. And I'm really going to be getting into those topics in this presentation. Now, it's worth noting that business is not the same as government. Government is not the same as business. Very different entities, very different ways of looking at the world. For the purpose of business, it's really about providing a product or service for a profit. And if you can't do that for the profit, the business ceases to exist. Government is really about representing the interests of its residents and providing services for those residents, not necessarily trying to make a profit. For the target population, businesses are looking at whoever wants to come in and pay for their service. And so whether it's someone in Wayne, whether it's someone in Lincoln Park, doesn't matter. If they're interested in buying that service or product, that's the target population. With Wayne, we're really focused on what is happening within the borders of Wayne. If a new warehouse wants to come into Pompton Plains, I'm not as concerned about that. I'm really focused on what's going on in Wayne. For the product, you see a lot more innovation in the business community. It's really about marketing and presenting a product that people want, that people are going to pay top dollar for. And in government, it's really about providing a service that meets a broad based need in the community. And then, of course, revenue. Like I said, businesses can't exist without selling their products for a profit. And government does not have that problem. Instead, we have taxes generally on properties, but we also have other fees and other taxes that bring in our revenue. And so different entities, different types of entities, different ways of looking at the world and operating in the world. And so conflicts have arisen between business and government. I mean, historically, if you think of some of the old factories that were just dumping chemicals into the waterways, impacting people's water supply and so on, it was a way for the business to operate that was affordable, but created a problem with the public. So there was this conflict. Government stepped in and put in regulations. More recent conflicts. Fortunately, I think Wayne has avoided too many conflicts in this case, but ever since COVID, we've had a large increase in the number of outdoor dining areas. And restaurants want to bring customers in. They want somewhere that's lively, that's attractive, that's fun to be at, so that people come in and patronize their business. At the same time, people living next door might want to be able to get to sleep a little bit earlier at night and are impacted by the noise. And so there are those conflicts where government's trying to regulate, businesses are trying to operate. And of course, time for businesses, time is money. They want to get the store open right away. They want to get the permits right away. They want to get the product launched right away. And government is about, dotting your I's and crossing your T's and making sure all the paperwork is in place. So there are those conflicts, but it's not all conflict. There are benefits between government and business. So the business community benefits from the safe environment that the Wayne Police Department helps provide. At the same time, Wayne Police Department benefits from the businesses who are kind of the eyes and ears throughout the community, helping alert them when something is going wrong. Businesses benefit from the access to customers and resources provided by government-built roads or sewer or infrastructure. Governments benefit from a thriving communities. Can you imagine what Wayne would look like if we did not have the business community here? If it was just homes and schools, it would not have the same feel as it does. And of course, technology. The federal government was involved in the development of the early internet, but ever since then, it's really been the business community building it. We would not be having this meeting here online if it wasn't for the business community. So, there are conflicts, there's benefits. And really they operate in various different ways. Now, local government is heavily involved in land development, which is a big part of the economy, a big part of the business community. And so the way the local government gets involved is we'll designate different areas for different types of uses. So if you're in Packanack Lake, it's generally designated for single family uses. Same with Pines Lake, Lions Head Lake, and our various neighborhoods. If you're on Hamburg Turnpike or Route 23, these areas are designated for businesses and offices and restaurants and so on. That impacts how businesses can operate in the community. The local government is responsible for determining where to build utilities, where to extend water lines, sewer lines, and so on, and for provision of infrastructure services or transportation infrastructure and bus services and transit. Now, all these items are addressed in the master plan. And so that's where this really is important, because this is an area where we can work together and find a way where our goals align. So we're working together rather than in cross purposes. So we're doing a new master plan. It's being overseen by the Master Plan Steering Committee, which is made of Mayor Vigano, Councilman Fatal. Frank Ranaletti, Planning Board Chair, was part of the board until he retired at the end of last year. We have Ahab Hussein, who was recently appointed to the Board of Adjustment, Barbara Riglioso, Board of Ed, and Leif Skoberg from the Environmental Commission. We have Richard Falcone and Armin Marini as alternate members from the Planning Board, Joshua Morris and Vula Papadopoulos from the Environmental Commission as alternate members. I serve as an advisory member with Matt Cavalier, who's the attorney for the Planning Board. And then we have a consultant team that's really doing the legwork. That's led by T&M Associates, Caroline Ryder. And then we have Diversity Marketing and Communications, Forward Planning, and Kyle McManus Associates. So what is a master plan? This is really a long-term document looking at the development of a municipality over the next couple of decades. And it's broken into various topics such as land use, circulation, economic development, housing. And the goal is to provide a holistic approach looking at a broad array of topics for how the town is going to develop. So the township's current master plan dates back to 1994. It was re-examined in 2003, 2010, and 2020. I drafted the 2020 re-examination report, and the key recommendation here was that we needed a new master plan. And a lot of that was driven by the changes in technology. So if you think back to 1994, a cell phone was a giant brick that you lugged around with you, whereas now it is a high-tech computer that fits into your pocket. The Amazon was a rainforest and river system, whereas now it is one of the most innovative companies out there, completely revolutionizing how we do retail. If you look at document storage, you used to store it in libraries or various document rooms. Now all your documents are stored on the cloud. And if this stayed in just technology and it was just a fun thing to look at, that might be one thing, but it had larger changes on the economy. So if you look at the office sector, all that document storage, all the space dedicated to that, it's not needed anymore. And if you look at some of the automation that's been going on in the tech sector, there's fewer jobs that are needed to do the same amount of work. And of course, particularly we've seen since COVID, though it's beginning to recede a little bit, the ability to work from home means there is less demand for office space than there was in 1994. Retail is seeing a very similar story where with Amazon and various other online retailers, there's less demand for brick and mortar shops than there was in 1994. And so we have large areas of Wayne that are dedicated to these uses, Route 23, Route 46, Hamburg Turnpike. All those are based on the economic conditions of 1994, which no longer exist. So doing a new master plan is a chance to develop a strategy in response to those changes. For the master plan, we're hoping to be done Q3 of 2026, and it's going to have a variety of plan elements in there. We are including an outreach and engagement overview that will identify all the work we did to try to get public engagement and public input. A couple of the key ones, we're going to have the land use plan element that is an essential element of the master plan. As part of amendments to the local or municipal land use law, it's going to include a climate change related hazard vulnerability assessment. We're going to have a circulation plan element, economic plan element. One thing that you'll notice that is missing on here is a housing element. We're not doing the housing element as part of this process because we were really tied down to timelines under the court process in round 3 and now the amended Fair Housing Act with the timelines for round 4 that did not fit into the timeline for the master plan. So the housing element was done separately. In terms of our timeline, I really started working on this March 2024, drafting an RFP. We selected a team, did a kickoff, and first phase of public engagement started in September of 2024. and went through the end of the year. We were planning on doing more engagement this spring, but with all the work going on as part of round 4 of the Fair Housing Act, we actually pushed that back until September of this year. In the meantime, we've been working on developing technical review memos, sort of setting this factual stage for some of the engagement that we're going to be doing in phase 2. Like I said, phase 2 is kicking off in September, going through December, and then after that, we will be going into phase 3 of public engagement. So what does the public engagement actually look like? Round 1 was really open questions. We would try to leave this as free flow or free form as possible so that the public could put in what were their key priorities, what were the things they were interested in, so that we could identify areas to focus on as part of the master plan. And so the idea was to find what are the strengths of the town, the things that we don't want to mess up, and what are the challenges, the things that we need to try to fix or address. So we did that. We completed round 1 in December. We're working on the technical memorandums. We're going to come back with rounds 2 and 3. And instead of the wide open questions, these are going to be a lot more directed questions about policy development. Is this an appropriate policy for Wayne in general, or for maybe portions of Wayne, or so on? Yes or no, strong support, strong opposed, those sorts of questions. Round 2 is going to focus on land use, circulation, and economic development. And round 3 is going to focus on recreation, open space, and climate change. So we have a whole series of technical memorandums. As they are drafted and ready to release, we will be posting them on our webpage. At this point, the public engagement memo for phase 1 has been released, as has a market and real estate analysis. We released that last week. We're working on our zoning and land use memo and our circulation mobility memo. And as those are available, we will be releasing them and posting to social media, announcing that they're released. So for phase 1, we engaged in a variety of activities. We attended Wayne Day and talked to about 400 people. We presented at the Corporate Appreciation Day breakfast, had a focus group with 12 faith-based organizations, had 3 public meetings, 2 in person, 1 were virtual. We had 83 attendees there, and an online survey with 668 responses. I'm hoping for phase 2, we can bump those numbers up a little bit. And we also had a webpage, informational video. We've been making social media posts. And we've been getting the word out in the press. We've had help from Ferris to get some articles in Tap Into Wayne. We've also had articles in the Patch and NorthJersey.com. So what did we hear from our public engagement? Online survey, general strengths. Top 2 answers were safe community and the quality of the schools, followed by the next tier sort of answers over or responses over 100, high quality housing, recreation facilities, and stores and shops. In terms of general challenges, once again from the online survey, it was overcrowding, traffic and congestion, and loss of open space in natural areas. And this was held towards the end of round 3 of affordable housing, where we had a lot of developments in the news. So it's really not too surprising that these were key concerns. Ultimately, the town has to meet its affordable housing requirements. So we have to see what we can address while working within that framework. Second tier of responses were office and retail vacancy rates, places to gather or lack thereof, and so a lack of walking and biking facilities. From our in-person meetings, the key challenges and responses we got was a lack of a town center, a lack of independent restaurants, too many strip malls, and too much new residential development. So I think at this point, I'm going to stop, take some questions on the engagement aspect of the master plan, and then we'll move on to the economic analysis that we did.
Great, Chris. Appreciate that. Tell me what you learned during this engagement here. What is guiding this master plan now, given what you've learned on phase 1?
So we did learn that people love the schools and love the parks and recreation options out here. I think probably the biggest concern is the amount of housing being built. At the same time, that's largely established by the state. So I think the challenge is, how do we meet the state requirements while addressing congestion and overcrowding and those sorts of concerns? They're sort of conflicting issues, but the question is, can we make them conflict less than they might initially appear? We did learn a couple of things from the engagement process itself. We had been posting stuff to social media without it really going anywhere. So I've been working with a couple of people, try to get some of the stuff seeded into various groups on Facebook so more people are able to see what's going on. We noticed that, interestingly enough, the public engagement meetings that we had in December, the first 2 meetings were in person, and they were good meetings. We had a lot of good discussions. but it was hard to get good comments posted on our boards. And part of that is it's difficult to write something thorough and thoughtful on a sticky note. Whereas when we had the virtual meeting, people could just type their comments into Zoom, and we were getting dissertations on there. The quality of input on Zoom was actually much greater than the in-person in terms of anything we could document. Now, the conversations we had in person were actually really good, but it's hard to document that. So that was one of the interesting takeaways we had. Yeah, I think that covers it.
Chris, I have a quick question. You mentioned how things are changing. Obviously, people do have less need for office space for the reasons that you mentioned. And even, I guess, retail space now that people are ordering from Amazon and whatnot. And that's why, what I see in Wayne is no different than what I see in other towns, that there are some, retail spaces that haven't been filled, which it's the obligation, I guess, of the landlords to do that, right? Is there anything the town can do in the meantime while those landlords are waiting to maybe fill those spaces, or maybe they're choosing not to fill them? I don't know. But is there anything that the town could do to like make things look better? For instance, I've seen towns like little downtowns where if a building is empty, and I don't know if the town is making them do this or people just doing it on their own, if a retail space is empty, rather than just letting it look empty, they put stuff in the windows and stuff so that it looks nice. Like it could just be, like pictures of a fake awning or something like that, or flowers or something, just so you don't see these empty spaces. Is the town able to encourage, retail landlords to make those spaces look a little nicer until they find their next occupant?
So that's an interesting question. Some of that goes into what are the powers of government and where can government operate? Hypothetically, and I'm not an attorney, so I don't know the rule or the law on this, but we might be able to force that with an ordinance and say you have to do this, and if you don't do that, we're going to send you notice of violation. Certainly, it's possible that government gets in the way. There may be signed regulations that say, "Oh, you can't actually do that, even if you want to." And then, of course, assuming we ignore the regulations. Let's say we have no regulations impacting this. Government could coordinate with property owners and work with them and try to collaborate with them so that the property owners have a process to follow. They know what they can do, and it encourages them to do that. So there's different ways we could do that. I think that is a pretty good idea to try to have something that keeps vacant shops looking nice. In terms of on the enforcement side, property goes through a site plan approval by the planning board or board of adjustment. That is the plan that governs the condition of that property. And so if they don't follow the site plan, if they're, let's say they're storing containers on the site, that's not permitted under the approval, we can issue a notice of violation. And of course, there is property maintenance. So if there's weeds growing everywhere, if there's litter scattered across the site, our property code enforcement officer can go out there and issue a violation. But I do like the idea of a collaborative approach for dressing up some of those window fronts. I think that could be helpful.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so if anyone has questions, make sure you put them in the chat and I'll read them off to Chris during this. But Chris, I'm going to encourage you to just try to make sure that you're taking a business owner's perspective on this presentation here. What are you looking for from us? What is important for us to learn here?
Well, I think from a business owner's perspective, I think the next part of the presentation may be a little bit interesting, which is the economic analysis, because that we might want more retail in Wayne. If there's no business demand for it, it's not going to go anywhere. So, it's not a situation of if you zone it, it'll come. It's a question of what's their demand for, and does our zoning actually accommodate that? Mm. So does it make sense going to the next part or wait for a couple of questions coming in?
No, go for it.
Okay. So the market and real estate analysis, we just released this last week. It was prepared by Forward Planning and reviewed the status of various sectors of the economy and identified sites with a greater likelihood of redevelopment. For the residential sector, it noted that the market is constrained, but two, that's shown negative growth. Now, some of that is because the projects for round 3 have not been completed yet. Some of them are under construction, but none of them are actually on the market yet. And two, or at least we're not on the market when the memo was done. But two, over the past decade, Wayne has been pretty successful with its Blue Acres work, where it's been removing homes from flood hazard areas, largely in Old Wayne and along the rivers, And as a result, we have had a negative growth in total population and in number of households. And that further constrains the market. And so what the memo noted is that there is demand for new apartments, townhouses, and what's called the missing middle. And the missing middle is basically housing types that are somewhere between large scale apartments and single family homes. So that could be a duplex, a triplex. It might be a small apartment building with just 10 units in it. Those are sort of the missing middle. There's demand for that type of development. It also noted that the days of large scale single family developments is done in Wayne. We just simply do not have the land to do that anymore. And then further, and I think this is one of the key things for the master plan is residential development is going to be a key driver for demand of retail and office. That the retail and office will follow the residential growth as opposed to them sort of developing on their own. For the retail sector, as noted, the retail sector is relatively stagnant, and that it's going to be tied to residential growth. So essentially, if we don't grow our residential population, there's actually likely to be a decrease in retail, and some of that goes back to we had a retail environment that was balanced with our population prior to the advent of Amazon and online shopping. Okay, I just actually got a text that the chat room is disabled, or the chat. So Lorraine, can you take a look into that real quick?
Okay, I'll take a look. I'm getting chats from people, so
Okay.
I
yeah.
don't see any chats but from you in the chat, just so you know.
But I've gotten chats from people directly. They can't chat to each other. They can chat to the hosts and the co-hosts.
Oh, okay.
I guess you're going to have to ask the questions. I don't get access to them.
No, you're a co-host. You would see them as well, but somebody sent me one directly. Like they have an option to send it just to me. But if I see anything, I'll let you know.
Okay, so for anyone watching, send the messages to the host, and that should work.
Yeah, I'll text some people that I know that are on the call and see if they could send me a text.
Okay.
I mean, send me a chat.
Okay. So yeah, the retail sector, like I said, it was balanced for a time that no longer exists. And so if there's no growth, there will probably be a decrease in retail. Though, as I'll get into with our affordable housing, there is actually going to be residential growth. Office sector is fairly similar. The market is stagnant. If there is new growth, it really should be limited to local businesses and flexible office space, such as co-working. The likelihood of landing a major corporate headquarters is not there. It's not likely to happen. And we're not really going to attract that sort of business, particularly just with zoning. There has been some discussion of converting office sites to other uses. With affordable housing, we've seen office sites being demolished and repurposed for housing. Unfortunately, conversion to light industrial is unlikely. Apparently, the financing of that just simply doesn't work. The land is worth too much as compared to the land for light industrial. So office to warehouse conversions, not so likely. Light industrial sector, current vacancy rates are low. And so there's a demand for new light industrial growth. What's interesting is that demand is really for spaces between 10,000 square feet and 100,000 square feet. So maybe you have a 500,000 square foot warehouse, but if you can carve it up into 5 or more pieces, you're serving a market that there's still high demand for. And so that may be something worth looking at with our land use element. Where can we accommodate more warehouse spaces? Is that maybe a suitable alternative for some of the office and some of the retail? And then improvement to land value analysis. And I think it's worth actually going into the document itself. So if you have time, it is posted on the township's webpage at waynetownship.com/masterplan. What they did is they compared the improvement value of a property to the land value of the property. And areas that had a low improvement value ratio are essentially ones that are more likely to redevelop in the future. Now, this is just purely looking at assessment information. So you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt and look at other information that's going on. For instance, is this an area that's in a flood hazard area? Is this an area with a store that's working out really well? Or is this an area with a store that is likely to fail? It identifies a whole series of properties. Some of them already have development approvals and are likely to redevelop there. But it's really helped the master plan steering committee identify places to look at as part of our land use element. So I'm going to stop here and take some more questions on the market and real estate analysis.
Okay, I currently do not see any questions in the chat, but I have confirmed that people can send me a question in the chat because multiple people send me a test one.
Okay, excellent.
So Chris, what can the township do to, you just went through that whole section there. What can the township do through this master plan in any sense to attract more businesses to Wayne?
So I think based on this, it's going to be difficult to attract retail and office, at least not without further residential growth. Light industrial, that I think is our opportunity to attract new businesses. And the question is, are there areas that currently do not permit light industrial that might be suitable for that? Are there properties that are, vacant or falling into disrepair that would be better off rezoned for those uses? Is this something that maybe we have a cluster of small properties that are chaotic and not functioning properly? And maybe that's something where the use of redevelopment law would help clean up some of these properties, make them more attractive, and make them suitable for light industrial use. And some of that comes with the question of what's the appropriate role of government? Is Wayne the sort of place that wants to use redevelopment law? Is it the place that wants to use zoning only? Some of those questions. And I think those are the sort of questions that we're going to try to get at in our public meetings for phase 2.
Okay, cool. Well, keep going. We'll look to see if we get more questions.
Okay. So that's sort of the master plan. I'm going to jump into affordable housing. And ultimately, I think a lot of this is going to tie back into the master plan as the process moves on. But we'll jump into affordable housing. And I'm going to give you guys the quickest summary of affordable housing I can. If you want more information, we've done several presentations recently. You can go to waynenj.viebit.com. And there were presentations to the council on July 16, 2025 and October 16, 2024, as well as the planning board on June 30th, 2025. So under the New Jersey State Constitution, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, municipalities have a constitutional obligation to provide for affordable housing, and the obligation has been addressed over several rounds of regulations. We are currently in round 4. We just recently wrapped up round 3. The methodology for determining the obligation is established by the state, and there is an enforcement mechanism. If a town is not meeting the requirements, a developer can come in and rather than going to the planning board or board of adjustment for site plan approval, they can skip the town's regular zoning law and go straight to the court, and the court would make that decision for the town. There's a process where communities that are relatively built out, such as Wayne, can use what's called a vacant land adjustment. And so you analyze how much land is available, and you say this is the amount of development you can accommodate. It creates what's called a realistic development potential. Now you have your obligation, you do the vacant land adjustment that creates a realistic development potential, but the remainder doesn't go away. The remainder is called unmet need. And under prior rounds, unmet need was rather wishy-washy. You had to address it, but it wasn't really very specific as to how you had to address it. With amendments to the Fair Housing Act adopted last year, round 4 requires what's called realistic zoning for a quarter of the unmet need. So it's a much more strict standard. And that is something that we included as part of our round 4 plan. So going over the various projects for round 3, the big one is the Toys R Us project. That's 1,360 total units, going to be a mix between apartments and townhouses. Valley National Bank, this is on Valley Road Extension, 473 apartments and townhouses. Preakness Shopping Center has zoning for 244 apartments. The former GAF headquarters is 449, mostly townhomes, some single family. Wayne Bridge is at 1560 Hamburg Turnpike. That's the intersection of Jeffrey Way and Hamburg Turnpike. That's 98 apartments. Rockledge Garden Center, just up Hamburg Turnpike from Wayne Bridge, 105 townhomes. And Galway at 1895 Route 23, right across from the Lincoln and Bottle King. That's 232 apartments. In terms of the status of these projects, Valley National Bank, GAF, and Rockledge are actively under construction. Wayne Bridge and Galway have site plan approval, with Wayne Bridge having gone through resolution conformance and is ready to submit for building permits. And Galway is almost there, almost ready to submit for building permits for the rear portion of the site, which is the residential portion. They are before the Board of Adjustment right now proposing changes to the commercial portion of the site. It was originally approved with a grocery store and a sit-down restaurant. And now they're proposing a Wawa gas station and a Chick-fil-A drive-through. So that leaves Toys R Us and Preakness Shopping Center. Both of them have zoning in place, but we have not received any application for development. So nothing's really going forward until they make that application. But that could happen at any time. Ultimately, from round 3, we're looking at 2,961 units, residential units being constructed. Moving to round 4.
Hey, Chris,
Uh-huh.
real quick, how many of those 2,961 are rentals?
Toys R Us, I can't tell you because we don't have an answer on that. Valley National Bank is all rental. Preakness Shopping Center is rental. Wayne Bridge is rental. And Galway is rental. So I'm going to say about 1,200, 1,300 are rental, with Toys R Us up in the air.
Where most of that's probably going to be rental, right?
My guess is most will be rental, but we really don't have an answer on that yet.
Thank you.
So in terms of round 4, we used a vacant land adjustment in round 3. We continued using a vacant land adjustment in round 4. For round 4, really the obligation we had to hit was somewhere around a little over 100 units. And we met that obligation with a couple of different sites. There's 993 Route 23. This is 6 disabled veteran apartments, 100% affordable. It was approved by the Board of Adjustment and is currently under construction. 1805, this is one you may have heard a little bit more of. This is the township-owned property. It's going to be 100 plus affordable units, including 10 developmental disability units. We awarded the RFP on June 18 to RPM Development to build and operate the site. And then we have a late addition. This actually did not make it in the round 4 plan, but will be in the amendment to the round 4 plan. This is 1655 Valley Road. This is another Avalon Bay project. Now, this was originally included in the round 3 settlement with the Fair Share Housing Center, listed as an unmet needs site. And if we had taken this to court and it was already working its way through court, and the court decided these units would have been apportioned essentially to the unmet need, and any credits from there essentially would have gone into a black hole. Instead, the township settled with Avalon Bay. The settlement was authorized by both council and the planning board, authorized finally on July 28, 2025, for a development that will have 275 apartments. It's worth noting that the proposal that Avalon Bay submitted to the court, their request was for 490 units. So it's a substantial decrease from what Avalon Bay was asking for. The ordinance was introduced on July 16 and is up for a public hearing and second reading on August 20, 2025. So next council meeting. So once we're done with the objection period in round 4, when we amend the plan, this will be part of that. Now, those are our RDP sites. That leaves the realistic zoning. So we had an RDP, a little over 100 units. That's going to go up with this 1655 Valley Road project. But that left almost 900 units of unmet need, a quarter of which had to be addressed with realistic zoning. And so we decided to put that at the Preakness Shopping Center, Wayne Hills Mall. Essentially the entire area from Alps Road to the Church Lane jug handle. Right now we were proposing 15 units per acre zoning with a 20% set aside. We do believe these are sites that are likely to redevelop that could generate affordable housing. It is a realistic zoning, and this would permit approximately 1,000 units in this area. And the key here is this is a potential new downtown. So what does downtown Wayne look like? Here is as clear of a vision as we have at the moment. This is relatively new. We put in the housing element, which was adopted in June, and really need to start doing some of the legwork to move this forward. Even though it's pretty early in the process, there are some easy questions that we can at least ask, even if we don't have the answer. Number one is, how much government involvement is appropriate for Wayne? So we could do overlay zoning, rezone the site, call it a day, let the property owners decide how they want to respond to that zone. We could try to reach out to all the property owners, get them all around a table, discuss, come up with a common vision for the site, and move forward in that direction with appropriate zoning. We could take another step forward in terms of government involvement and use redevelopment law without condemnation. And so we would be able to designate a developer. We would be able to have very strict design standards. We would be able to really lay out where the blocks and lots would go, where the buildings would go. We'd have a lot more control over the design. And then finally, we could do redevelopment with condemnation, where basically the government says, your property is in bad condition, we're taking it from you, and here's a little bit of money. I'm not recommending that one. There's a time and place for condemnation, and there's a whole process to go through, but generally it's overused, over relied on, and I don't think it's appropriate in this case. The next sort of question, like I said, we're talking about Preakness Shopping Center and Wayne Hills Mall, and there's a series of smaller commercial properties in between. And so, do we leave this up to individual property owners to decide on their own isolated how they want to develop their own sites, or do we work to come up with more of a coordinated development of the site that fits together? Some of the larger questions: how do we manage circulation in this downtown area? We heard in the master plan that people are worried about traffic congestion and overcrowding. Is there a way that we can set this up so it helps keep a lot of the trips being generated internal to the site? If someone is in an apartment where the Macy's is, and they decide to go to a restaurant where the theater used to be, and they just walk there or they drive there and they don't actually get onto the surrounding streets, is that actually creating traffic? That's one of the things we can look at, is how can we mitigate traffic by on-site circulation? Also, how can we use our existing traffic signals efficiently? This is one of the things I hear about probably the most, other than we have too many houses coming in, is people do not like traffic signals. They were used to driving up Hamburg Turnpike without having to stop, or with only having to stop maybe at 1 or 2 traffic signals. And every time we get a new traffic signal, it annoys people. So we already have quite a few signals here. What can we do to maximize their usage without needing new signals? Can we use the downtown Wayne and the new residences to breathe new life into our commercial sector? Can we bring in new shops? Can we bring in new restaurants? Can we help build our commercial ratables with all the residential that's coming in? And can we use this to create a place for people to gather, for people to spend time in public? Can we create public spaces as part of this process of bringing in new housing and reimagining the new downtown? And then, of course, we have the greater planning context. If you go east of this site, you have the 100% affordable project, you have 1655 Valley, and you have the Valley National Bank site. That's about 850 units right there. If you go west of the downtown area, that's 98 units at Waynebridge, and of course, 1,360 units plus commercial at the Toys R Us site. So I don't think we can really look at the downtown Wayne area alone. I think we also need to start planning for how do we connect these developments so they sort of function together. So is there a way that we can add bike pedestrian connections? So perhaps you're living on the Toys R Us property and you want to go to a game at Barber Pond. Maybe instead of driving, you hop on your bike and you bike down there. There are things that we can do to address some of the traffic generation and just to make the area a little more attractive and more enjoyable in general. Can we have enhanced bus or circulator service? Right now we have bus lines along Hamburg Turnpike. Frankly, I'm not sure I'd want to be waiting for a bus at a bus stop on Hamburg Turnpike as cars are flying by at high speed. And on Valley Road, the bus goes up to William Patterson, stops, and turns back around. Can we develop some sort of a bus service circulator, either with the county or with the state or New Jersey Transit, or somehow that sort of ties these areas together, that's convenient, easy to use, and helps keep vehicles off our streets? So those are some of the high level ideas. I'm sure there are high level questions that we have to answer. I'm sure there will be other questions that come up throughout the process. And I think one of the big questions will be what that process looks like. But we're at the beginning stages there.
Appreciate all this, Chris. Questions about that downtown area. This is something that people are talking about and very interested in. You created you have or will create an overlay zone for this area, meaning that the people who own it now could change what they have there based on this new zoning, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And I heard the mayor speak at a council meeting saying, maybe some business people can get together and come up with a plan. I saw that you showed that with condemnation, without condemnation, that's not decided yet, how much the township wants to be involved in creating this. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think we've really had those discussions to flesh out exactly how we want to do it. I do think the first step is to reach out to the property owners. That is something that is on my agenda. I think that's the first step, and then do we want to go beyond that is really up for a question.
And it's up to them. They own the property. You can't really force it unless you do that with condemnation, right?
Yeah, if we do it without condemnation, it's up to the property owners to come up with a either redevelop it on their own or come to an agreement with the developer to build it out.
How do you encourage businesses that are there, developers, the property owners? How do you encourage them to move forward with the downtown like this? And do you encourage them?
So I think there's a couple of things. Number one, I think the 1,000 units of housing is an encouragement to redevelop the site. That's worth quite a bit of that's quite a bit of value right there in itself. I think really the question for how you develop it, hypothetically, everyone could have their own individual apartments that really don't connect to each other, that don't relate to each other, and they'll still make money off of it. But I think it's leaving value on the table. I think explain to people how you get more value out of a cohesive plan that fits together. That's really how you convince them to do that.
This is for years people have been talking about how empty spots in the Preakness Mall are just a blight on the community and don't look good. And how come the town isn't doing something about it? Is this what the town is doing about it?
This is part of that puzzle. Generally, with a mall or a strip mall, vacancies happen. Even in a good economy and a good site, there is a certain amount of turnover. When you start having larger vacancies, the question is what can be done about it. And unless either A, we leave it up to the business owner to find tenants and re-tenant the site and or even redevelop the site under current zoning. B, we give them enhanced zoning, or C, you go through that redevelopment process with condemnation, which, like I said, I'm not a fan of. But there's really limited options for how you actually get new businesses into the site from a government perspective. That's really more of a private sector issue.
We have a question from Erica who asks, are any of these developments using the NJEDA Aspire program?
I don't believe so. There may be a possibility for the 100% affordable project. That's really to be determined. But I believe all the inclusionary projects are coming in with their own funding, financing, developers coming in and building these. I will note that the Veterans Project, the 6 units on Route 23, I'm not sure what project that was or what funding stream that was, but it was a funding stream from the state specifically for veteran housing.
Okay. We also have a question about the number of affordable units that are part of this, round 3 and round 4. So I think it was like 528 or 534 affordable for the round 3 out of 2961, if I remember correctly.
So let me see if I can pull that up. I will say that gets into the fun of what I call Mount Laurel math, because you have units, you have bonus credits, and
Well, we know for round 4 that the two units, the first one is 100% affordable, so that's 100%. We got 6 in the veterans, and then I think it was 20% set aside for 1655 Valley Road.
1655 is a 15% set aside.
15%.
I'm just doing some quick math.
Yeah, I think it's going to be right in that 530 area, unless things have changed.
Well, 4 of the projects I listed for round 3 was 530 or 531. And then, the 100+ units at the 100% affordable site, that's all gonna be affordable. The 6 at the veteran site, and then the 15% of the 275, 42 units for the Avalon Bay project.
Okay. Has the town identified areas that might be appropriate for light industry?
That we have, and that's one of the things that we need to be looking at as part of the master plan. And what I'm hoping to do, and some of it is trying to figure out how do you actually do this in a public meeting, is leave that up for a question for the public. Take us a certain site that might be susceptible to redevelopment, and the question is this an appropriate place to put light industrial, or is this an appropriate place to put residential? Put those options on the table, let the public make a decision. I think largely it'll be based on, how is the property doing? If you have a property that was recently built, like 910 Hamburg Turnpike, where Trader Joe's is, we're not going to be asking about that property. That property is going to be stable for probably the next couple of decades. But other properties that are having a little bit of a harder time, either they've lost a tenant or they're just not in great condition, those are more likely to be redeveloped. We're going to be targeting those places to see if the public would support a zone change for that.
Okay, another question I have is I'd like to know how all these rental versus owner units will impact the commitment to the town. Will they be attracting more transient people?
I mean, when I look at this, we have the affordable units. I think once you get an affordable unit, you're not likely to move on, or not going to want to move on. I think if you're going from affordable, nobody wants to pay market rate. If you look at the market rate, generally the leases are about a year long. Is that still transient? Maybe. But even then, I mean, if you look at the prices that they're charging at Avalon Bay, I don't see the issue with transients. I don't see that being a issue here.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I wrote an article recently about the fact that what the mayor said that there's really the future of Wayne is either $1 million single family homes or multi-family units. And that's what's being built at this point. No more starter homes, no more Cape Cods, no more split levels. Any kind of empty lot that shows up for a rebuild is tend to be maximizing its profit potential. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, no, that sounds about right. And I think it's worth noting, people aren't born as homeowners. You know, you're raised up, you go to school, you become an adult. You don't necessarily jump into home ownership right away. There needs to be a rental market for people who aren't ready to buy homes. And there are people who are, they're downsizing from one home, they're looking to buy another. The rental market helps serve them as a place in between while they're in that transition. And some people just want to, they want to be done with maintenance and the mowing the lawn and all those issues. Rental isn't necessarily a bad thing. It provides opportunity for people who are looking for something different than home ownership.
Yeah. I think the times they are changing for sure. And rentals are going to be much more of a part of life across New Jersey. Cindy Sapel has a question. Could you ask, are there examples from other towns that Wayne is modeling these changes after? General question. Are you talking about, maybe she's talking about downtown Wayne, maybe she's talking about the zoning, but what kind of models are you looking at?
So for downtown Wayne, we're going to be looking at a variety of different towns. I've been looking at different design standards from different zoning ordinances of different places. The pictures I showed were from Avon in Alpharetta, Georgia. It's northeast of Atlanta. And recently they did a redevelopment there. I think it was a mall site or some sort of a larger commercial site. They did a complete redevelopment of the area, and very attractive place, a lot of nice businesses, great place to gather. They have movies out on the lawn, they have yoga out on the lawn. So we're going to be looking at those, looking at some of the best practices for how to do this sort of redevelopment.
All right, well, we're coming down to it. So let me ask you that same question I asked you before. What can the business community do here? You had asked me to have this event here in August because of things coming up in the fall. So, what is it that the business community can do for you here, just to wrap it up and send us home?
If I'm being selfish, I would say post our flyers and share our social media so people know this is going on, that we get the word out. But more for the business community to engage in the process and to advocate for themselves. Think about where there is friction between government and business. Are there things that can be done to make your lives easier, to make the process of investing in the town a little less, have a little less friction? And if there are ideas and opportunities that you see out there in the market that aren't available in Wayne for one reason or another due to our land development ordinance or our master plan, bring those to our attention. If there's something you want to see here, let us know so that we can understand, what the public and what the business sector is really looking for.
And what kind of, given this information that we received today, how could it be valuable for business people here?
Some of that depends on where the business is, it's location, location, location. I think what I talked about with downtown Wayne, for any of the businesses in that area, I mean, that's gonna be some pretty valuable information. That area will be changing and, they have to be ready for that change. That's more people coming in, potentially more customers coming in, and they're gonna want to take advantage of that. For other places, keeping an eye on what's going on with their transportation, keeping an eye on what's going on with development, seeing where people are moving in, it'll give them an idea where to direct some of their marketing, give them an idea for, the type of people that are coming in, the sort of wealth status, the buying potential, and so on. And I will say, I think particularly with our market and real estate analysis, there's going to be some good gems in there for the business community to look through that may give some insights into, how to market to Wayne.
And there were a couple more questions here, but I think the last one, one asked, how will all these new residents, impact recreation facilities, all that, the schools, you know, um, I think the answer to that is that things are going to be a little more crowded here at some point, but we're probably looking at it more of a longer timeline. And that's what the last question is. What's a realistic timeline for these projects to be finished?
Um, well, first to go to the recreation and schools, some of this, it's a state obligation to have this growth. And basically the state said it's on towns to figure it out. So, for utilities, for our water sewer, we're doing a 25-year study right now to figure out how to accommodate our growth. The school, they're always doing an updated long-range facilities plan where they track population growth and growth of different age groups to figure out how many students they have to accommodate. They're going to have to work through that. Parks and recreation, some of that is how do you define recreation? What types of recreation are people looking for? Certainly it's going to put some pressure on our ball fields and sport facilities, and we're going to have to figure out how to accommodate that or find new sports facilities, which land is limited. That may be difficult, but maybe if we have more areas to bike and walk, maybe recreation is going out for a nice bike ride or going for a run, or maybe recreation is sitting out in a park or in a plaza and just sitting there and chatting. There's different ways you can do that, and perhaps by providing more opportunities, that sort of spreads out that demand. In terms of timeline, I'd say for like the GAF project, that's probably going to be I'm going to guess 2, maybe 3 years to actually build out. I know they're working on blasting now. They've got to do the blasting. They've got to get the site work in, the stormwater. Then they actually have to build and start leasing, and they have to go through the entire project before they actually close everything out. So those projects take a while. For downtown Wayne, I'm going to guess this is a decade-long project. I could be wrong. It depends on market demand. It depends on how well the town works with property owners, how well the property owners work with the town. There's a lot of open questions there. So some of these are very long range. The Avalon Bay project at the Valley National Bank site, that's almost ready to open up if it hasn't opened up already. And seeing how quickly Avalon Bay moved forward on that, my guess is 1655, might be 2 years out and they're ready to go. So some of these projects are going to come quicker than others. Others are going to drag out a little bit longer.
Yeah, Toys R Us, another 10-year project too, right?
Toys R Us is going to, my bet is longer than 10 years. They have to come in. We have a different process for them where they have to come in with a general development plan where basically they break the property into different phases and they tell us how many units are going in different phases and how much commercial square foot is going in different phases. Then they have to come in with site plan applications for each one of those phases. I know they're working on the site. They have applied for a letter of interpretation to delineate their wetlands. They've made that application to DEP. I don't know if there's been a decision on that yet, but that is one of the first steps they have to do before they really start coming in with a site plan application. So even then, I think when you consider how many phases are going to be involved, and give a couple years for each of those phases, Toys R Us is going to take a while.
Yeah, I think it kind of gives Wayne a long period of time to adjust to what this change is coming. It sounds like it's very drastic, reading my articles, 3,000 new units coming to Wayne, but they're going to be spread out over years and years of them coming. So it'll give us an opportunity to kind of get used to increased population, and hopefully that will help the township kind of soften the blow of all of this. But Chris, I want to thank you for your time today. You're awesome. I appreciate you. And you've got Chris Kok's contact information here. So if you want to reach out to him, please do. I appreciate everyone being part of our webinar, and thank you to our host Lorraine, and to everybody for being here. So anything you want to add, Lorraine, before we
Yeah,
go?
Ferris, I'm just going to add two things. Chris, I think when we talked before, you said that you would be able to make your PowerPoint available um, for the attendees. Can I send that out to people?
Yeah, I'll send that your way.
Send that my way, and then I'll send it to anybody who attended. And then also just reminded everybody this was recorded, so we will put it up on the chamber's website. This way anybody can see it. And I had also put Chris's LinkedIn uh, URL in the chat so that you can reach out to him there and connect with him, because the more information we help the township with and let them know what our desires are, it's our town, right? Let them know what we're looking for so they don't have to guess. So be a part of it, right? Don't let Chris just have to wonder what we want.
They don't let me wonder what they don't want. I hear plenty of that.
That's true. That's true. We know we're all on Facebook. We all know what people don't want. We just don't know what they do want.
Right. Good
So
stuff.
I want to thank you guys for having me. I think this is great, and I hope to hear from everyone soon.
Awesome. Awesome, Chris. Thank you. Thank you, Ferris, for being our moderator. Oh, and also I forgot to mention when we started, besides Joe and myself and Ferris, Marissa is on the call too. She's another board member. So I was remiss in not
Oh,
mentioning.
Marissa.
So anyway, everybody have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.